Kilo number 4, Mexico, Ocean, Germany. My name is Gene, and I'm 30 kilometers northwest of Atlanta.
Roger, Gene, is that G-E-N-E?
That is G-E-N-E. Roger.
Roger, and where did you say your location was, sir? Sorry.
I am 30 kilometers northwest of Atlanta, Georgia.
Alrighty, let me get my Georgia SDR on the trail, and I'll see if you sound any better. What radio are you running, sir?
We're running 6400. Over.
I'm sorry, 6400, Roger?
That is correct.
Okay, I just went down to Georgia, and I was much better on my local antenna. So I am on my local antenna, and you are about at 15 to 20 over. A very nice signal. And so tell me something about your radio that you really like.
Okay, well, I assume that you're going to run a spectrum or something. And I was going to tell you that there was another station, AM station, just like the one you were talking about, that had the tower out in the waterway, and that is up at St. Augustine. I don't know whether you were aware of that or not. I think they were on 1240, something like that. Over.
No, I was not aware of that one, but you from experiencing that one realized that was that a kilowatt station?
Roger, that's correct. And there was an article in QST about some hams actually being given the Collins transmitter out of that station probably a year ago. Over.
Roger. It might have been a big mistake for the station that gave it, because there probably wouldn't have been a better standby transmitter than that Collins.
Roger. I think they had an additional transmitter in addition to that one. But, yeah, they had run the radio system out there on a pier, and it went down in the water. Same as you were talking about down further south. Over.
Roger. Now, normally, what they do would be the transmitter would be in the studio or at the station on the land side, and they would just run coax out to the tower, rather than put the transmitter out in the ocean or in the waterway. Roger.
Oh yeah, understood. I've been in broadcast engineering myself, and yeah, the transmitter stays inside. Antenna goes outside. There was also another station you may be aware of, Jim, WAPE, and they were 25,000 watts, and they actually used an old Darty linear circuit, brand new for them, but, parts, but the Darty linear's been around since the 30s. And they could be heard up and down the coast because of the ground conductivity. They were in Jacksonville, Florida. Over.
Oh, Roger, I heard the ape growl many, many times, sir. The station that I worked for was an older station. 1933, I believe, was its beginning, and they had their original transmitter, which had been moved to a backup transmitter, and the current transmitter they had was an RCA. One of those forever. Everybody had one RCA kilowatt, I think it was. But that first one was a Western Electric low-level modulation transmitter. That is, what low-level modulation is. They modulate like at about 25 watts or 100 watts, and then they amplify the whole thing, hopefully linearly, up to a kilowatt. And it was always a great battle to get that station to amplify the audio linearly because of one tune or another. It was very critical to tune that transmitter, Roger.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, Western Electric used the Darty linear. The Darty linear was actually 2 tubes. Let's say your power output was supposed to be 1,000 watts. One tube continuously ran 500 watts, and the other tube, fed out of phase, would pick up anything over 500, so that the exciter, when it went positive, the audio went, well, the carrier went positive above the, power in the sidebands. It actually, allowed it to swing that way. And that was a very efficient circuit that Western Electric came up with. I'm wondering if that might be the Darty linear, over.
I was not privy to a bunch of that at the time. I could only tell when I was coming to work, I could tell which transmitter they were on, because there was a decided increase in distortion, at least to my ears, when they were running the backup transmitter. And I'm sure the technical engineer there was very proficient at his capabilities. So I know that he was tuning it just as best as it could be tuned, but to me, it did offer a little bit more distortion than a plate modulated signal. Roger?
Roger, understand. And I think probably they had a Darty linear. In fact, WAPE was a Darty linear, and to get their 90-degree phasing that they had to have, they actually ran a transmission line out and back of the station and then back in that was cut to a quarter wavelength of their frequency on 690. So, it's been done before, over.
Roger. Now, I also worked for a 50 kW station that was the original station that used Western Electric transmitter for 50 kW. And this was like a long room with doors on either side of it, as this transmitter just was like a half a block long, Roger?
Yes, exactly. And WSB here in Atlanta, their early transmitter was a Western Electric, and it was a long room. You had your power supply, you had your modulator, you had your final section.
Roger, and if you notice, they were always located beside a lake, and they would use the water in the lake for cooling, not for the actual cooling, but because the water that they were using to run through the thing was a closed loop water system, but they would use other water to cool that unit. Roger?
Roger, yes. The Western Electric, some of the other early transmitters were water cooled. And probably the best example of the water-cooled transmitters was WLW in Mason, Ohio. Did you ever see that one?
Oh yes, sir. I saw a presentation of the 500 kW portion of that transmitter, and there was an old tale that engineers told about when they were ever around a transmitter like that WLW transmitter, that you would always keep one hand in your pocket. You would never have both hands exposed at the same time for obvious reasons.
Roger. Well, there was a saying among broadcast engineers, Little Johnny took off like a rocket because he didn't keep one hand in his pocket. Over.
Roger. And the other side of that tale is in the Navy, they used to have what's called an S-stick, which turned out to be a wooden prod with a ground lead on it, and this ground lead came back down the stick, and you would click the other end of that ground to the chassis. And when they would bypass the interlocks to open the transmitter areas with the high voltage, they would always take this S-stick, and you can imagine what the S stood for, and they would tap around in there to the high points and make sure that everything was dead to ground. Roger?
Roger, yeah. The 5 kW transmitter that I used to work with actually had the S-stick inside the door, and the wire leading to the S-stick was braid, and the braid was copper braid, and it went right to the chassis. And what you did without fail was once you opened that door and closed down the transmitter, You did exactly what you were saying. You went to the top of the big oil capacitors. You grounded them. You grounded the plate. And once all that was done, some of the engineers used to leave the S-stick actually laying on the plate circuit itself. Over.
Oh, Roger, because you wouldn't want that to come back, for whatever reason, back to life as you were working in there. So I think we've covered about all the transfers. Really been very interesting, Gene. Roger?
Roger, yes. And I just heard you talking about the in the water business, salt water, and had to mention the one in St. Augustine. Well, so what are you hearing on that end, Jim?
Looking pretty good. I would just run through a couple of things just to double check. It looks, like I said, pretty good, but your compressor's on at a 3. Is that a Roger?
On the 6400. The compressor is normal, DX, and DX plus, and I'm running DX. Over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's good. And then, do you have a modulation light on that, or a ALC meter?
Well, I've got a compression meter, and I'm compressing about 22 dB on the meter, and I have a level meter. I'm not sure what level it's monitoring, but I've been told it's about -8, and on peaks, that's where it is. Over.
Roger. Does that have a light at the 0 level?
A light at the 0 level?
Yes, it does, and the light does come on from time to time. Over.
Yes, Roger, that's exactly what you want from time to time. Nothing consistent as far as that light coming on, but just every once in a while. So with that said, gosh, I would say that you're probably running about as best that you can run there, Roger. You know, the only thing would be maybe a slight EQ boost on the top end. I'm always pushing that because it's a matter of intelligibility, and when push come to shove and you're in heavy QRM, or you're contesting whatever it might be, the more intelligent and more intelligible your audio is, the easier people are going to be able to understand the words. Sometimes, they can hear the voice, but they can't quite pull out the words, and that's because the articulation level of the equalization is not pushing the top end quite enough to make it articulated. So I would say if you got a chance, maybe a click or two more top end EQ, just to brighten things up just a tad.
Okay, very good. Good advice. I just went up 1 on the equalizer here is divided in 63, 125, 250, 500, 1K, 2K, 4K, and 8K. And I just went up 1 click on the 4K and 1 on the 8K. This is what you're sounding like down here this afternoon, Jim.
Slight EQ boost on the top end. I'm always pushing that because it's a matter of intelligibility, and when push come to shove and you're in heavy QRM, or you're contesting whatever it might be, the more intelligent and more intelligible your audio is, the easier people are going to be able to understand them.
So that's what you're sounding like on this end, Jim. Over.
Thank you very much, Gene. Very good recording. The other thing is, I would like to hear you one time come back with your compressor in the normal range versus the DX1 position. A normal range on your compressor, Roger?
A normal range on your compressor, Roger.
Okay, this is the normal range right here with no compression. Well, actually, there is compression. I think anytime the processor is in the circuit, there is compression. Let me cut processing off. Okay, now processing is totally off, and there's no compression. Over.
Yeah, Roger, I wanted to hear it just with that normal on. You have 3 positions on that compressor: normal, DX1, and DX2, I guess it is. So I thought the DX1 might have been just a little too much, just a tad too much, and I just wanted to hear you in the normal compressor range, Roger.
In the normal compressor range, Roger.
Well, so what's your verdict?
I think I like the normal better. I think the +1 DX position might be just a tad too much. It tends to become more than what I'm looking for in setup is a 3 dB dynamic range, because I think that that the voice has to have some dynamic range to assist intelligibility. That is to say, if there is no dynamic range and the voice is just up against the wall with nothing moving, you're just looking at 0 dB range, it's hard to understand what the words are because they're blurry. So you need a certain amount of dynamic range in the voice, and I found 3 dB to be the ideal amount of life in the voice dynamics. Roger?
In the voice dynamics, Roger?
Roger, Jim. KC9VKV, K4MOG. Well, that's about where we are now. I do believe the compressor is in the normal, the processor is on, and I am getting compression about, right now, about minus 25 dB compression. Before it was minus 22 dB compression. So it's 3 or 4 dB further down, and that should give me some dynamic range. Over.
Yeah, so that looks fine. That looks right at 3 dB, which is exactly where you want to be. So I think we got her. Outside of that additional EQ, if you wanted to crank that in at a later date, Roger.
At a later date, Roger.
Yeah, Roger. Okay. Well, my only other question, Jim, is what are you looking at it on? Or do you have a audio spectrum analyzer you're running there?
Yes, sir. On the set, there is a spectrum analyzer, which, incidentally, we have been recording from now until, well, from 5 o'clock, from 3:30 till 5. So if you want to look at our QSO and you can observe the spectrum analyzer that's on the set, if you go to YouTube and do a call letter search for KC9VKV, that's Kilo Charlie 9, Victor Kilo Victor, followed by today's date, 1/15/21, that will take you directly to this recording. And like I say, we do have a spectrum analyzer on the set tied to the audio, and you can see what your radio is doing there. And also, I'm looking at a VU meter. I've spent 50 years looking at VU meters. I can tell where the VU meter is going within a nanosecond of its travel, moving up the range just by the speed of the ballistics. And looking at it, you can tell and easily tell what the dynamic range is as to how the meter moves. Roger?
As to how the meter moves, Roger?
Roger, yes. I spent some time looking at a VU meter as a disc jockey, and you're absolutely correct. You can tell a little bit about what's going on there. Well, I'm sure other people are trying to reach you, Jim. 73s, thank you for the check. KC9VKV, K4MOG.
Roger, MOG. Gene, 73 that way, sir. Thanks for dropping by, and if you get a chance, join us next Friday. Well, this is the Friday afternoon Qso-Vlog net. If you have a radio you want to check out, give me a shout.